One of the scariest stories I've ever heard from the Appalachian Trail is one that I read on Reddit of this guy who went hunting out there, but it wasn't like on the, main portion of the AT where people are able to walk and camp and whatever. There's a whole section where you're able to go hunting and stuff, so just keep that in mind. So he went to the Appalachian Mountains to go hunting, okay? And, everything was normal. He was out there all alone with his gun, with his, pack of shit, tooling and tooting around the woods all by himself, hunting for game. So he's walking through the woods, right? And then all of a sudden he comes across this young boy who looks to be either severely abused by his caretakers because of how malnourished he was, or lost. He kind of gave the kid a once-over, trying to, distinguish what is going on. So he gave the kid a once-over and realized that he had a toy pack of arrows on his back. So maybe he was thinking maybe his mom, let him go outside into the woods by himself, which was rather odd because the kid was so young, or looked so young because of how emaciated he was. So he was like, hey kid, what's going on? Where's your family? He didn't say anything in return. Oh, I forgot to mention that in the story, he said that the kid had a really odd look to him, almost like the hills have eyes type deal. And that's not me being rude. That's his words himself from the story. Anyways, he asked the kid where his family is, what's going on, if everything's all right with him. And the kid doesn't say anything, but he reaches behind him and grabs what this guy thinks is a toy arrow. And as he, the guy thinks that it's a toy arrow the entire time until the kid cocks back the bow, and the older man realized hey, it has too much recoil and too much angst for it to be fake. So what the fuck? The guy's just standing there not knowing what's going on, and the kid shoots the fucking arrow through his leg. Shoots a motherfucking arrow through his leg, and the guy starts running, trying to run through the woods, and he hears fling, fling, fling right by his head, and the kid is shooting fucking arrows straight at him again. Another one hits him in the back of the shoulder, and that's when the guy's like, all right, fuck that, I'm gonna have to pull my gun out on this kid, which he didn't want to do in the very beginning because he was like, this is just a kid, I don't even know what the fuck's going on. So he ends up pulling out his gun on this kid and aims it directly at him, which freaks the kid out enough so where the kid is he freezes for a second and he's like, oh my god. And then he haphazardly shoots another arrow at the guy before taking off running through the woods. The guy never had any intentions to actually shoot the kid. He just wanted to scare him. He never wanted to have to shoot a child. But honestly, even the sheriff, okay, so listen, he went back to town, right? He made it back to town somehow, some way, with those fucking arrow wounds in his leg and his shoulder. So he makes it to the sheriff's office and he makes a report. Apparently, that's a thing. That's a thing. And the sheriff honestly just said that he should have finished him off so that he could have saved other people from enduring the same thing that he did. Because more than likely, somebody else, who's out there in the mountains, just doing their own thing, minding their own business, is going to come across this child or another one of his family members. Or, another one of those, feral people who absolutely live out there. It is a very real thing. They're, I know a lot of people who live out there like to say, oh, there's no such thing as feral people, blah, 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 blah. There's documented accounts, fam. There's documented accounts, my friends. So, I have more stories if y'all are interested. I read a lot of Reddit, and also you guys have been sending me your stories, which I love. I'm so excited to be reading more of your guys' stories. So thank you for that. But that's probably one of the scariest stories that I have personally ever read about the Appalachian Trail. Or not the trail. I keep saying Appalachian Trail, but when I say that, just know that I mean the entire mountain, okay? I also have my own set of stories, which I have told before on here, but I am more than happy to tell them again because they keep me up at night.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Featuring my gold initial necklace. If you don't like gold, they have silver. It's down here if you want it. Now onto the story. I've always told these stories to friends, but I figured this would be cool to share with TikTok. My name is Kat. One of the scariest / creepiest experiences that I've had in my life was when I was around 17. My grandparents had adopted me, and my grandpa passed when I was 13, then my grandma when I was 16. I then moved in with my aunt / godmother and my uncle / godfather, as well as my brothers. One's a year younger, and the other is 11 years younger. Now, pretty much everywhere you go in New Mexico is going to have some spooky history. Lots of things happened back in the Wild West days. We live next to a landmark known for untimely deaths, and everyone is out in the sticks with your neighbors, like 50 yards away at least. Pitch black at night, and just trees and mountains to see besides the highway in the distance. We lived in a double wide that had been renovated over the years, so lots of corners and compartments. My room, which was once the office, was against the main living room wall, dining room wall, and then bathroom wall beside my door. The corner of my room where my closet was also the corner on the other side that has a large plant. A spot we'd all seen something or someone walk by out of the corner of our eye, even my grandma, who has already passed away. Now, I've had nightmares since I could remember. Vivid, scary, spooky, weird dreams, so I'm not even embarrassed to admit that I won't sleep in silence or the dark. I hate it. Valid. I wake up freaked out and disoriented, and it's even worse if I wake up in the dark. I also didn't believe in leaving doors open. I hate when doors are open and I am sleeping. Unfortunately, my aunt and uncle didn't believe in wasting electricity, lol. And they also like to leave the doors open so that heat could go into my room. Unbeknownst to me, my uncle went after I passed out to open my door and shut my nightlight off. The nightlight too? I also had a bamboo poster hanging on my door that would scrape along it when it opened. The floor has certain spots that would creak when you step there. This comes in later. I wake up around 1 a.m. from a leg cramp, practically wake the house up because I screamed no when I woke up. When I was pregnant, I had the Charlie horse of the century. The literal worst experience of my life. So waking up in the middle of the night screaming no, very warranted. Very warranted. Anyway, I get that worked out after like 20 minutes, and my aunt, who came to check on me, says goodnight and tells me to leave the door open. Puts a nightlight out in the hall area facing the front room and leaves. I don't fight her because I know I won't be able to sleep now anyway. So I lay there before smartphones were a thing with my cheap little Nokia brick by my side. When times were so simple. It's completely dark in my room with only a dim blue light from outside my door. I'm lying on my back, legs crisscrossed, waiting for the pain to subside so I can get up. I hear the floor creak. So I whispered for my aunt, but no one answered. I lean my body to look out more and nothing. I hear my door move and the poster scrape across the back, but the door was already open. This time, I'm too creeped out to speak. I just look into the darkness, waiting. The floor creaks again, and I felt a panic attack coming. Then it feels like someone sat on the end of my bed. But the pressure moves up like something huge is laying on top of me. For reference, I'm a big girl and 6 foot tall, so you'd have to be pretty big to do that. I felt like I couldn't breathe, I couldn't say help, I couldn't move. Then finally, I yelled no, again. So my aunt pops back in, upset, asking what happens, and I was like, oh, sorry, I think it was just a nightmare again. Just thinking about it gives me the creeps to this day. Well, oh my god, was that the only experience that you had with that thing? Ugh, I don't like that. Rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. Please don't forget to go follow my backup account. I am saving up for a car, and any money that I make on that account will be going towards my car jar. I'll see y'all in the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
I don't know what y'all believe, but I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I can tell you firsthand that a lot of the things I say about that place are true because I've experienced a lot of unexplainable things. A lot of those things happened to me after I moved in with my grandmother to take care of her. She wasn't doing well. She lived in a big 2-story house on top of a mountain in the woods. This house always freaked me out ever since I was little because it was big and dark and creepy. But I moved in with her to take care of her, and I lived in the basement. She lived on the first floor. I lived in the basement. It's not really like a basement like you're thinking about. It's like a split ranch, I think is what they're called. So anyways, I've always had trouble sleeping ever since I was a kid. This night was no different, except the bad thing about Appalachia is most things happen at night, and 3 a.m. is not a good time to be awake in the Appalachian Mountains. So I was in bed, couldn't sleep for anything. I looked over at the alarm clock. It said it was 3 a.m. on the dot. I was like, great. Hate that I'm awake, especially hate that I'm awake at 3 a.m. So I roll over, I close my eyes, I'm trying to go to sleep. As soon as I lay down and close my eyes, something hit the end of the bed. It goes boom, 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 right beside my feet. And I literally have chills right now thinking about this because it freaks me out. I still think about this every single time I go to bed. This is what pops in my head. I jumped up out of that bed so fast, I didn't know what the heck was going on. I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to know about. I literally have chills. Oh my God. Ever since that night, I I have not been able to sleep in the dark. I have to have some kind of light on. I don't sleep with an alarm clock beside my bed. If I do wake up in the middle of the night, I do not check my phone, because if it's 3 a.m., I don't want to know. I don't know what it was that hit the end of the bed. I know that it wasn't something that was nice. I didn't smell anything, but I felt the energy off of it. And you can call me crazy if you want to. A lot of people don't believe any of the things that I say that happened to me in Appalachia. But I don't live there anymore, thankfully. I'm in Florida now. I'm very far away from all those things. But that night, in particular, because it was just, I was alone. Like, it was, if you ever experience something that is unexplainable and terrifying and you have no way to talk about it to people, it really makes you feel alone, and it kind of makes it even worse. But I would not recommend going to the Appalachian Mountains ever.
A young family with one child moves into a new house. The child is a boy, 3 years old. The mother is in the basement one day doing laundry. She hears the boy in the next room playing. She hears him talking and goes to see what he's doing. He's standing at a wall and talking away as if someone were there. The mother asks to whom he is talking. The boy replies, "The sticky man."
Oh, no.
The parents just think the boy has invented an imaginary friend. He often tells them that he was playing with or talking to the sticky man. Not just in the basement, but all over the house. Talks about the sticky man so much that the parents start to get concerned. They explain to the boy that it's okay to have imaginary friends, but he needs to understand that the sticky man is not real. This makes the boy very upset, and he insists that the sticky man is real. "The sticky man is getting mad because you keep saying he's not real." The parents finally tell him that he must stop talking about the sticky man. The boy continues to say that they are making the sticky man mad. One day, the boy is standing at the top of the stairs to the basement and starts to jump up and down, clapping his hands, saying, "The sticky man is coming! The sticky man is coming! The sticky man is coming! He's coming! Sticky man is coming! Sticky man!" The boy says the sticky man is in the basement and that he is very mad. The mother is becoming scared of her son's strange behaviour. She decides to go down to the basement to show him that no one is there. Down the stairs into the laundry room she goes. When she looks around, she sees something on the far wall. There's mould all over the basement wall and a grey ooze dripping down from what seems like a large hole in the wall. The mother goes closer to investigate it. It seems like the hole has been eaten in the wall. There are bite marks all around the edges. The goo is flowing down from the hole. She hears a drip, drip, drip of the grey odourless liquid falling and splattering on the basement floor. She can hear her son sitting at the top of the stairs chanting, "The sticky man is here! The sticky man is here! The sticky man is here!" A small droplet of slime splashes on top of her head. She looks up. A huge, brown, oozing, moving, bubbling, slithering shape is clinging to the ceiling of the basement. Sticky goo and ooze is falling in droplets off its hideous, mouldy body and forming puddles on the floor. Its face resembles a human, and its evil eyes bubble and shift, staring angrily at her. The thing forms a sort of mouth, and it opens it wide, leering at her. Suddenly, slimy tentacles of ooze reach out to grab her. The mother screams and races up the basement stairs. The sticky thing on the ceiling oozes towards the door, trying to get there before she does. She grabs her young son, and as she runs and just about makes it to the door, the thing is flowing down the wall like slime to cut off her exit. She slams the basement door shut and locks it. Her son is still chanting, "The sticky man is here, the sticky man is here, the sticky man is here, the sticky man is here." She backs away from the door, her son still clutched tightly in her arms. She sees the ooze pushing its way under the door. The door's creaking, straining at its hinges as a huge force behind it tries to push it down. The woman scoops up the boy and runs out of the house. The woman refused to go back in the house. The family sold it as fast as possible and moved to another town. They never told the new owners what happened. Their son never mentioned the sticky man again, and eventually seemed to forget all about this period in his life. In time, the couple even had another baby. A little girl this time. On the little girl's 3rd birthday, her parents throw a party for her and invite all the kids in her class. She blows out the candles on her birthday cake and everyone asks her to sing a song for them. She stands on the chair and starts to sing, "The sticky man is coming, the sticky man is coming, the sticky man is coming, the sticky man is coming."
I came across this one recently and I had to share it. Some might find it creepy. I thought it was really heartwarming and all around gave me goosebumps. Back in 2002, a woman named Julie was working as a mail carrier in Blacksburg, Virginia. On her route, there was a particular loop that took her past an office building. It was a tiny little place that at the time served as an office for a bar. And the woman who owned that bar had 3 big guard dogs. These dogs were known for being aggressive and protective and absolutely not friendly. So Julie made it a habit every time she approached that building that she would scan her surroundings first. If the dogs were out at the time, she'd skip it and she'd come back. It was a simple system and it worked for her. So on this particular Saturday, she approached and she scanned the area like she always does, and coast was clear, there were no dogs in sight. So she walks across the lot, she goes up the 2 tiny cement steps to the porch, and she drops the mail in the box, and then she turns back to go down the steps. And the moment she turns around, she sees one of the big German shepherds right at her feet. So he was nowhere to be seen just a moment ago. And at this point, he is down sniffing at her feet. And she is just standing there, like running everything through her head. Like, what is she going to do at this point? She said, I about died on the spot. So she starts to sweet talk him as she's trying to go down the steps. She's like, hey boy, what a sweet handsome boy you are. But you know the dog can sense her fear. So like this entire time, she's like backing down the steps, trying to slowly back across the lot. And she knows if she turns and runs, it's over. He is going to attack her. And every single step she took, this dog matched her pace. He was right there and he had begun to bare his teeth and growl. And her heart is freaking pounding. She said even the low growl, she could almost feel it in her body more than she even heard it. He was so close. So she's even slower now and she keeps backing up and she can hear the cars behind her. She's getting closer now, running out of room. She said either the dog was going to attack her or she was going to back up blindly into traffic. Either way, not a good thing. And then she says, in that moment, she thought, or maybe she even said it out loud. She said she can't even remember in the moment, but she said, help me, Jesus, either out loud or to herself. And guys, like that, a young man was standing right next to her, like out of nowhere. She said she did not see him approach. She did not hear him. He was just there and calm. And then he looks at the dog and in the most gentle voice, he says, hey there, easy boy, everything's okay. There's no need for all of that. Guys, that dog, the same dog that had been growling and snarling its teeth, just rolls over and exposes his belly. And he is just like in submission now. His tail is wagging and this man reaches down and he pets the dog. Like they were old friends or something. And then there's a commotion up on the porch. The owner flies out the door, comes down, apologizes, and grabs the dog away. And so that was just kind of all in a few seconds. And then Julie turns to the man because she wants to get his name to thank him for saving her, essentially. And y'all, this man was gone. Like no trace. And she has a real good view of like all the surroundings. There is no way that he would have been able to sort of swiftly walk out of sight, like from where they were at. He just freaking vanished. This is such a good one. She says she'll never forget it. And I want to know what you think. Do you think that was some divine intervention? Maybe a guardian angel or a man with super lightning speed? Drop your thoughts in the comments as always. And if you have your own creepy story or otherwise, I'd love to hear it. And if you're new here, you know what to do. Follow for more creepy story time.
Because of this experience, I feel like I always have to watch my back. The story comes in from a listener. Let's dive in. This happened to me last year, and I was 17 at the time, and I was helping my best friend move. And we finished up, so I got in the car and I was headed back to my house. And it was one of those long back roads, you know, the kind where there's no street lights, there's really no houses, and you barely see another car. And then that's when I saw it, the headlights behind me. First, it wasn't weird. It was just, oh, another car on the road doing their thing. But then after 10 minutes, I started to feel like maybe this car was following me because every time I slowed down, it would slow down too. And it just kept the same distance the entire time. So me being a paranoid teenager turns into this gas station, this old gas station that just happened to still be open. And I park my car and I turn and look, and that car just kept on driving. So in that moment, I felt relieved. And then I also felt a little silly, but I'm at a gas station, so I'm going to go ahead in and get me some snacks and a drink. And as I'm standing at the register to pay, that is when the clerk said something to me that made my stomach drop. He said, "So are you two headed anywhere tonight?" And I looked at him and I kind of laughed because I didn't understand what he meant by two of us. And I just said, "Oh, it's just me out tonight. But yeah, everything's good." And he just kind of looked at me with this very stern look and said, "Isn't that your truck?" I said, "Yeah, that's mine." And he said, "Well, there's someone sitting in your truck." And I turned and looked, and oh my God, there was someone sitting in the back seat. And the weird part is, I have tinted windows, so you shouldn't have even been able to see it. But I guess the way the lights outside were shining, you could see this perfectly dark figure sitting in the back seat directly behind the driver's seat. In that moment, I looked at the clerk and I said, "Nobody's supposed to be in my car. I don't know what to do now. Something's wrong." And he immediately went to lock the door. He called 911. We sat there looking at the truck. Nobody ever got out the truck. The doors didn't open, and you could still see the figure. The cops pull up, they come in. We open the door, we explain the situation to them. They go out to check the truck. Y'all, there's nobody in my truck. And all of a sudden, we can't see the figure. And he says the doors look fine, nothing's been tampered with. He does say you might want to go dry up the spill that you have in your back floorboard. And I looked at him and said, "I haven't spilled anything in there." And he says, "Well, I think you did because the back floorboard is wet. Like somebody got into my truck with wet feet, or they were wet and left it. Because before you come at me, I didn't spill anything in my car." No, for now on, I'm always checking that back seat. Thank you so much for sending me this story. There is something about them back roads and dark and in the middle of the night that are just creepy in itself. But wow, wow, for not only you to see it, but the clerk too. That is creepy. I don't know. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Drop your comments below. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks it was. And if you like spooky stories, hit that follow button. Come along for the ride. If you have any stories, send it to my email. It's in the bio. As always, stay strange, stay blessed. Share this out.
I used to work at a grocery store, and every single Friday night, the same man would come in and he would buy out all the rubbing alcohol that we had in stock. But even weirder, I started being able to predict when he would enter the store. It didn't matter where I was standing because all of the hair on the back of my neck and my arms would stand up and I could tell he had entered. This story was submitted by someone named Amy. It's very short, but it is very weird. So if anyone has any theories on what this man was doing with all this rubbing alcohol or why he seemed to target her, let me know. She worked at the store in the 1990s, and every single Friday night between 10 and 11 p.m., this same man who appeared to be early 30s, he was very tall, very thin, and very pale, but he always wore dark clothing, which stood in stark contrast to how pale he was. He would come in. He never said a word to anybody, and it did not matter how much rubbing alcohol the store had in stock. They even started stocking more because they came to expect him. He would buy it all. And then, regardless of where Amy was working in the store or which register, he would seek her out, and he would have her check him out, ring him up, and bag his items without ever saying a single word. She said she was always creeped out whenever he was in her presence, but he never said anything threatening. He would just stare at her as she bagged up his items, and then he would leave. But she was very happy when she finally was able to quit the store, and she thought, "I'm never going to have to see that man again." She moved a couple of hours away out to go off to college, and she got another job at a grocery store local to where she was living then. But of course, the story gets weirder because she said after she switched to the new grocery store by her college, she was working the first Friday night, and it was around 10 p.m. when all of a sudden all of the hair on the back of her neck stood up, all of the hair on her arms stood up, and she had that feeling of like, "Oh no, he's here." But then she was like, no, I switched stores. This just must be because I'm expecting him. It's that time of night. She's like, "I must really just have been conditioned because this guy must have just really gotten under my skin." Then a few minutes go by and she looks up and she sees that in her line is this man, even though they're several hours away from where she's from. Again, he's got a number of bottles of rubbing alcohol. She doesn't say anything. She just checks him out and he stares at her the entire time. She bags up his items. He leaves, but she told her boss that night that she needed to be off by 10 p.m. on Friday nights, and she never saw him again. She said obviously it's been years. She hasn't seen or heard from the man since, luckily, but she still wonders what that man was doing with all of that rubbing alcohol and how he found her after she switched towns. Let her know your thoughts and theories. I know this one was short, but I like the weird ones like this.
Let's read a scary ghost story. This story is titled, "My Town Had a Quiet Hour. Last night I found out why." I grew up in a tiny town in northern Maine. Probably barely 900 people. The kind of place where everyone knows your truck by the sound of the engine. But the weirdest thing about the town wasn't the isolation. It was the quiet hour. Every night at exactly 1:13 a.m., every single person stayed inside for 1 hour. No lights on, no phones, no windows open, nothing. As a kid, I thought it was some old tradition, like a weird small-town superstition. If you asked about it, adults would say, "Some things out there only notice you if you notice them first." No one explained further. Last month, my mom died, so I moved back home to clean out her house before selling it. I hadn't lived there in 12 years. Honestly, I'd forgotten about the quiet hour completely. Until my first night back. At 1:10 a.m., my phone buzzed. A town emergency alert. Quiet hour begins in 3 minutes. Lock all entrances. Do not look outside. I actually laughed. I thought maybe the town had turned the old superstition into some dumb community thing. Then every light on the street went dark at once. Not one porch light remained. The entire town became pitch black. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, wet, directly outside my house. I froze near the kitchen window. My first thought was someone was messing with me. Teenagers, maybe. Then something tapped on the glass. Not a knock, a fingernail, dragging slowly downward. I should have ignored it. Everyone said not to look outside during quiet hour. Instead, I peeked through the blinds. There was a woman standing in my front yard. At least, I think it was a woman. She wore a long gray dress soaked black at the bottom like she'd been walking through deep water. Her hair hung over her face completely. But what made my stomach drop was her height. She was impossibly tall. Her head nearly touched the low tree branch over my yard. And she was perfectly still. Then my phone buzzed again. Another emergency alert. Do not let them see you watching. The second my screen lit up, the woman's head snapped towards my window. I ducked immediately. Then came the sprinting. Not towards the house, around it. Fast footsteps circling the walls over and over. I heard fingernails scraping along the siding. Windows rattling, something laughing softly right outside my bedroom wall. I stayed curled on the kitchen floor, trying not to breathe. Then I heard my mother's voice upstairs. "Eli?" I stopped cold. My mom had been dead for 3 weeks. "Eli, come upstairs, honey." Exactly her voice. Perfectly. A floorboard creaked above me. Something was walking through the hallway. I almost answered automatically. That's the scary part. For half a second, my brain genuinely believed it was her. Then I remembered something my grandfather told me when I was little. They only sound human when you're lonely. Footsteps stopped directly above me. Silence. Then a single whisper right beside the kitchen window. He looked at me. Not you. He. Like it was talking to someone. Suddenly, every dog in town started screaming. Not barking. Screaming. And from somewhere outside, dozens of footsteps began running through the streets all at once. I don't remember much after that. I hid under the kitchen table, covering my ears until sunlight came through the curtains. At 2:14 a.m. exactly, everything stopped. No footsteps, no whispers, nothing. The next morning, the town acted completely normal. People waved at me. The diner opened at 6. Nobody mentioned the night before. Finally, I asked the cashier, an old woman named Ruth, what the quiet hour exactly was. She stared at me for a long time before answering. Then she quietly asked, "You looked outside, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Her face went pale immediately. She reached under the counter and handed me a folded piece of paper. On it was a list of names, hundreds of them, every person in town who had ever looked outside during the quiet hour. Next to each name was a date, and beside some of the dates was a second note written in red ink. Heard their family afterwards. I found my grandfather's name near the bottom, then my mother's. Before I could ask anything else, Ruth whispered, "You need to leave town before tonight." I asked her what happens if I stay. She looked toward the dark woods behind the diner windows and said, "They start talking to you during the daytime." That one was very chilling. Let me know what you thought about it. And of course, if you have any scary stories, let me know.
You know what's scary? These reports of portals that randomly open up in the forest. Now, we don't really know what they are or why they're happening, but there are many people who've had encounters. There was this guy named Brandon. Brandon said when he was younger, his mother used to take him camping. And this one summer, she took him to Baraboo, Wisconsin, out near Devil's Lake, to camp for a couple days. So he said they get to their campsite and they set up their tent and they get a fire going. Well, one thing he noticed that night is that they were the only campers around. Around 10:30, they decide to turn it in for the night. So they go to their tent. Except when they opened up this tent, they were horrified to see that there were thousands of spiders crawling all over the inside of this tent. And it was almost like they were attracted to something in the tent. So him and his mom look at each other and they're like, we're not sleeping in there tonight. And as they kind of look around their campsite, they notice there are all these squirrels and rabbits that are just running in the opposite direction, like they're scared of something. So him and his mother decide they will just sleep in the car for the night. So they go in the car and they get situated and relaxed. He said after about 20 minutes, they started to hear this humming sound. And it just kept getting louder. It sounded very mechanical, and they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So right at that moment, he looked out the window, and he sees this blue flash of light. And he said this blue-looking portal just opened up between two trees. And he said it was just pulsating this blue light, and he could almost feel this energy sort of coming off of it and vibrating his body. So he gets his mother's attention, and when she turns and sees it, she's like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? What do we do? That's when they see something walk out of it. It's a man, except this man looks like he's Amish. Behind him, another man and another. And in total, there were 5 different men that walked out of the portal, all dressed as if they were some kind of Amish or Mennonite. And he said one of them went back in the portal. The other 4 just slowly walked off into the woods with these bright lanterns. The portal closed, and he said, right at that moment, he began to feel really sick to his stomach, and so did his mother. And he said they just started vomiting both at the same time outside this vehicle. They managed to get the car started and they get out of there. But he said he still remembers seeing that strange portal open up in Baraboo, Wisconsin. Have you ever had an experience that you can't explain still to this day? Now, there was this man named Roy. Roy said that him and his friends were on this vacation, and they were traveling from Arizona to Ohio. Now, they were on Interstate 40. It was around 12:30 in the morning, and he said, there wasn't too many cars on the highway. Well, as they're driving, they said they noticed all of a sudden the radio started playing this really strange song. And they had never heard anything like it before. And it was basically this young kid saying that you better hide, he's going to come tonight. And it just kept repeating that like over and over again. Well, they turned the station 3 separate times, and every station this song was playing. So they thought this is weird. So they turn off the radio and they keep on driving, and eventually they come up to this road construction and they find that traffic is stopped. So they sit in their car waiting for like 15, 20 minutes. And as they look out, they can see this long row of cars in front of them. They could see these tractors with their, lights on. But it was just eerily quiet. And so Roy said he was like, well, this is odd. Like, why haven't we moved? We've been here for like 20 minutes. We haven't moved an inch. So after about 20 more minutes, Roy gets impatient. He gets out of his car and he starts walking over to these tractors. But he notices there's no one inside them. They are turned on, but for some reason there are no construction workers around. And as he looks all the way down, he doesn't see anybody. So he's like, what is the holdup? If they're not working on the road, then why are all these cars stopped? So then he goes up to the car in front of him. He said the car was running, but there was no one inside. And every single car in front of them, there was absolutely no one in the car. So he runs back to the car and he just takes off and starts driving on the side of the road. And eventually, about 5 miles down the road, they make it to this gas station. And when he goes inside and he sees this state trooper, he runs up to him and tells him, hey, there's all these cars parked at this construction site 5 miles down the interstate. Well, the state trooper, he radios into another officer who's in the area. He goes and looks, and he says there is absolutely no road construction taking place in this area. And still to this day, Roy has no idea what happened to them that day. Are there giant octopuses in Oklahoma? Now, despite the fact that Oklahoma has no natural lakes and that octopuses need salt water to survive, there have been countless reports of people seeing these large aquatic creatures in the lakes of Oklahoma. Now, a lot of the activity seems to be centered around this lake called Lake Thunderbird, where there have been many people who have drowned. And often it's been reported that they were pulled under by something. Now, there was a story from Lake Thunderbird. There was this woman who was camping in the area. And one night, she takes her dog for a walk along the shore. She'd been walking for about 20-25 minutes when she said her dog started to alert to something. It was barking hysterically. And as she looked off in the distance, she sees on the shore of the lake this thick, long-looking creature. And it's sort of dragging itself along the shoreline. She said the dog eventually slipped the leash and it took off running towards this thing. And as it got within a few feet of it, she sees this thing grab the dog and pull it into the water. She said soon this dog was submerged underwater and she was terrified. And she runs back to the campsite. She tells people they look for the dog. They never found it. They just assumed the dog must have ran away. Well, there was another story within this same general location. There was this fisherman who went out on the lake one night, and he said the water was very still, very calm. He was the only boat out there. So that's when he noticed something off in the distance. There was a large wake that started to form in the water, and it was moving in his direction towards his boat. So eventually this wake got larger and larger, and he began to brace because he thought something was going to hit this boat. But right as it got to the boat, the wake stops. He said the water went still again. It was very placid. And within a few seconds, he said he felt this jolt. And as he looked over, he seen these tentacles reaching up from the water, grabbing onto the boat, and it was trying to pull him under. So he grabs his paddle, he starts hitting this thing. He manages to get the boat free, and he's able to get the motor started, and he gets back to shore. And he said as he looked out onto the water, he just seen this big, large, what looked like an octopus submerge. And he could see the tentacles kind of wrapping around as it went underwater. So what do you think? Are there octopuses in Oklahoma? This invisible line that sits 37 degrees north of the equator, and it essentially divides the United States into the north and the south. Now, the thing about this imaginary line is the places that it runs through. It is known as the Haunted Highway because this line goes through Area 51, right? It goes through Roswell. It goes through the Four Corners region, which has been synonymous with skinwalker sightings. It cuts through the Ozarks, right, which is an epicenter for paranormal activity. It goes through Monmouth Cave, right, which is known to possibly be this subterranean city that exists in these caves that span thousands of miles. Now, it also cuts through the heart of the Appalachian and into Washington, D.C. Now, the eerie thing about this is if you look at all of these UFO sightings, these major events that have happened along this line, it also passes through the New Madrid Fault Line. And I've started to notice a lot of these places in the north or in the Four Corners region where they are seeing these skinwalkers. They are seeing them in the same place in the Appalachian Mountains along the 37th parallel. Now, some people believe this is some type of metaphysical type of ley line or possibly a tear between dimensions of space and time, and that this attracts sort of these interdimensional beings or evil or negative energy. Now, this is a story that I heard that takes place along the 37th parallel. There was this man named Chuck. Chuck said one night he was driving from Roanoke to Knoxville, Tennessee. He said he was on Interstate 81. It was like 10:05 at night, and it was a completely clear sky. He said as he's driving in his car, he all of a sudden started to feel kind of weird. And he said he almost like went into this daze. Well, he pulls off the interstate and he starts driving down this back highway. Then he gets off onto this dirt road. And eventually he finds himself in the middle of the woods driving down this dirt road high up in the Appalachian Mountains. And he starts to think, like, what is going on? Like, how did I end up here? Like, what made me get off the interstate and drive out into the middle of the woods? So he stops his car and he finally gets a hold of himself. And he's like, all right, how do I get out of here? Like, where do I need to go to get back on the interstate? As he's sitting outside of the car, he notices it's completely quiet. There's no bugs, insects, no sounds of the summer, like nothing. It is quiet. When all of a sudden he hears like this music, and it was coming from the woods. And it was just very soft and very faint, but he could hear it. And he's like, there is nothing around here. Like, where is that music coming from? And that's when he felt like there was a presence in front of him. And he said it felt very large. It felt evil and it felt menacing. He could not see it. He couldn't see anything but the woods, but he could feel something was standing behind the car next to him. So he slowly gets in his car, he closes the door, and he locks it. That's when he started to feel vibrations in his car, like something was, stepping really hard right behind him, something big. So he proceeds to start his car up and drive down this road. When he looks in his rear view mirror, he could see something was following him, even though like he couldn't physically see it. It was like he could feel something was chasing him. So he starts speeding, and he's going as fast as he can down this dirt road. That's when all of a sudden his radio turns on by itself, and it starts playing the same song that he hears out in the woods. So he's freaking out now, like, I need to get off this road, like something's going on. He tries turning off the radio, the music won't stop playing. And that's when he looks in his rearview mirror again, and he could see the outline of something very large, probably 9 to 10 feet tall, moving behind his vehicle. And he said the next thing he knew, he looked forward, and he found himself 90 miles away, now in Knoxville, Tennessee, about 5 blocks away from his home, sitting in his car. And he still to this day has no idea what happened to him, outside of the fact he was driving on the 37th.
My friend and I found a staircase in the woods that definitely was not there before. A few years ago, my friend and we used to go on this trail all the time. It wasn't a super popular trail, mostly locals knew of it. So one day we decided to take a longer path than we usually do. About an hour in, my friend looked at me and she said, "Has this always been here?" And off a little ways through the trees, you see a staircase. It's a wooden staircase. It's not connected to a house or a building of any sort. It's just standing there alone. We wondered if it used to be like connected to a cabin or something, but the closer we got, we noticed that it looked newer than the things around it. Like, there was no dirt on it, nothing was growing on it. We wondered if somebody had just been taking care of it, which would be really weird. And then we noticed something. We noticed that once we got closer to the staircase, all the woods went quiet. You didn't hear any birds, you didn't hear any wind, you didn't hear any leaves moving. My friend immediately got uncomfortable and said that we should probably leave. But I remember feeling weirdly attracted to it. Like, I wanted to go up these stairs so bad. Even though I could see the top stair, it led to nothing. It was just empty air. It was maybe 15 steps, and I went to go on it. I got a little closer, and my friend grabbed my arm, and they said, "Don't." I laughed it off, and I was like, "Why?" Like, just kind of teasing them, and they said, "I feel like it wants you to go up there, whatever's up there." And that's when I started to get a little uneasy once they put it like that, and so we both decided to leave. After about 30 seconds of walking away, I realized I didn't hear my friend by me anymore, so I looked behind, and she's over there, standing at the bottom of the staircase, just looking up. And she was looking up for a minute. I had to call her name 2 times for her to finally look over and acknowledge me. And the expression on her face was genuinely confused, like she doesn't know why she was standing there. Then she kind of yelled back at me. She's like, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Hear what?" She said, "Somebody called my name from the top of the stair." There is nothing there. We left immediately after that, but this is the part that really freaks me out, is a couple weeks later, I had some other friends and I was going on this trail, and I took them on the same exact route that I went on before, and I knew of these woods. I knew the area really well, but the staircase wasn't there. It was like it never existed. Later that night, my friend admitted something to me that she didn't tell me before. She said when she was standing at the bottom of that staircase looking up, it was my voice that she heard at the top telling her to come up the stairs.
Let's read a scary story. This one is titled, "I Made a Friend with the Girl in the Shed and She Shares the Same Freckle I Have." Trigger warning, this story will have brief mentions of abuse. I always hated going to my dad's mother's house. To make things easier, I will call her Grandma for this, but I don't see her as such. To this day, I can't tell you who hated who more. But there's a big difference. I was a kid and she was a grown woman. In front of my parents, she acted like the role of a loving grandma. Her lies weave a story of a clumsy girl who loved to play at her house. But me, terrified of what would happen if I said otherwise, agreed with her wonderful tales of how I got new bruises and cuts. The one thing that kept me going was that my stays with her were only temporary. At most, I stayed a few hours with her, waiting for my parents to get out of work or come back from their date night. But during one of their date nights, they never came back. No one knows who did it, but someone cut the brakes. They never made it to the restaurant, and the only place they had been to before that was Grandma's house. In the end, it was considered a freak accident, even though everything said it was anything but. When my maternal grandma offered to take me in, I felt some relief in my ocean of grief. This relief was short-lived, as Grandma fought to keep me, and won by saying I would have more normalcy with her, and that unlike my maternal side, I had many cousins to grow up with and aunts and uncles to spoil me. My maternal grandma had no other children besides my mother, and no extended family to offer. My opinion on the matter was irrelevant to the court, so I was never asked, and I ended up with my paternal grandma. She told me, "You will pay for everything," as she smiled and looked down on me the first day I was there. I trembled at her words, knowing she would make me pay for whatever she thought I was at fault for. I won't talk about all the horrors this woman made me go through, and how everyone turned a blind eye to it except for the shed. Outside the house, in the perfectly kept garden, there was a small shed. It was full of equipment, not insulated, and according to her, that's where the monster lived. Any time she got tired of me, she would lock me in there and say she hoped this time the monster would eat me. By the time I was living with her, I no longer believed in said monster. I had already realized that she was the real monster. Still, I was 8, had just lost my parents, and the last thing I wanted was to be alone in that shed. Any company would be better than an empty shed. So that night when she dragged me there, I screamed my lungs out, begging her to let me sleep in the house, knowing the consequences I would face in the morning for screaming too loudly when people could hear me. "Please, Grandma, I want to be inside with you," I cried. She didn't answer back. Instead, she gave me a smug look that quickly contorted to anger once more. She pushed me inside the shed and closed the door without a second glance. I wanted to cry, but the tears never came. Instead, I moved some shredders and made sure no spiders were in there. Thought of lying down and sleeping, but instead I got up, angry, wanting to hit something, break things, just feel something other than sadness and fear. But as I was about to hit the wall, I heard something, or someone, and I froze. "Please don't hurt yourself." The voice of a girl came from the darkest part of the shed. "Please, it hurts a lot." Small, pale hands with ruptured knuckles came out of the darkness. I tried to back away, but there wasn't anywhere to back away into. I couldn't take my eyes off of those hands. Those tiny hands that matched mine in size, so broken, full of unhealed gashes and bruises. And then when I finally looked up, there she stood, looking at me in as much surprise as I felt. "You see me," she whispered. "I do, but who are you? What's your name?" I asked. The fear I had felt a few seconds ago had turned to curiosity. "I don't know." The girl's voice trembled as if she was about to cry. "I know. What if we chose a name for you?" I said excitedly. The girl looked at me and nodded. I'm Leia, by the way, I said, as I extended my hand towards her. She slowly took my hands, but the moment she touched me, my heart started to race. Dizziness led to nausea, and my vision blurred for a sec, and then it was all back to normal. Are you okay? She asked, concerned. Yeah, I don't know what happened, I responded as I sat down. Be careful when you sit down not to squish the spiders. When she looked at me, I noticed something both familiar and strange. She had an eye freckle, just like my dad and me. After my classmates made fun of me and said I had dirt in my eye, my mom explained that wasn't the case. She told me that my dad loved me so much that he had given me a piece of him to carry with me. This is so cool, we both have the same eye freckle. Maybe we are sisters, I said excitedly. That would be nice, she smiled. What about Iria? I think it's really pretty. I looked at her hopefully. I like it, thank you, she said as she went to hug me. The same feeling of dizziness as if the world had gone wrong came back at the moment she touched me. I involuntarily shuddered, but hugged her anyways. I had decided that moment that Iria was my sister and we would be the best of friends. I'm glad to have a sister, she whispered. I'm glad to have one too, I smiled. And for the first time, I didn't hate the shed. I had found something I had always wanted, and when morning came, I would tell her to come live with me. Grandma's house wasn't great, but together we could make it better. I'm not sure when I fell asleep. All I remember was talking to Iria about all the cool things we could do together. I told her we could all go visit my maternal grandma so she could experience having a nice grandma. Iria didn't know how old she was, so we decided I would be her older sister, and as such, I had to make sure she was happy and safe. Get up, hurry, my aunt yelled at me. She lived next door with my 3 cousins and her always wandering husband. The social workers will be here soon, so you better clean yourself up and behave. You know what happens if you don't, she threatened. I quickly got up and ran back to the house to shower and be ready and have my hair pulled into a perfect ponytail by her. Not obeying would mean no dinner and probably no breakfast either. In my haste, I had forgotten about Iria. I showered extra quickly and put on new clothes laid out for me and went inside to the shed. But when I opened it, she wasn't there. I thought maybe she had gone home or something. The show went as usual. Grandma and my aunt doted on me and showed the social workers my room painted in what they said was my favorite color, pink. I hated pink. My aunt would call my cousins over to come and play with me while the adults talked with the social worker. Once the visit was over, things went back to normal. I no longer had access to the room, and my cousins weren't allowed to play with me. During the day, I was never sent to the shed, but now I wanted to go back there and hopefully see Iria once more. That night, I wasn't sent to the shed. Grandma was too happy with the visit and the continuous money she was getting from having to tolerate me. I didn't sleep much, wondering if my little sister was doing okay. You are so ugly, Regina pushed me to the ground. No, I'm not, I yelled back. I knew that if I touched her, I would get in so much trouble. Yes, you are. My mommy said so, because you look like your ugly mother, Regina mocked me. I lost it. I didn't care if she made fun of me, but no one made fun of my mom. I got up from the floor and I punched her directly in her nose, just like my mom had taught me. Blood spattered everywhere and she gave a loud shriek. What did you do to my precious girl? Aunt Estrella yelled from the house entrance. Her whale-like body tried to move quickly, but her feet could only go so quickly. Before reaching her daughter, she slapped me hard. I looked at her terrified, but her focus was back on her wailing, blood-soaked daughter. I felt some relief until I felt my grandma's hand on my shoulder. When I looked up, she was smiling, and that was so much worse than anger. Again, I won't go into much detail as this isn't what the story is about, but I did end with bruised hands after Aunt Estrella hit them repeatedly with the belt, with Grandma and Regina as witnesses. That night, I was dragged into the shed to think about what I had done. I'm so sorry to do this. I never do this, but this story is going to need a second part. I will post the second part right after this. Let's continue the second part of the story. I made a friend with the girl in the shed, and she shares the same freckles I have. I cried and cried, hating my life, but hating those people who had hurt me even more. I was so absorbed in my pain that I screamed when a gentle hand touched me. I immediately regretted it when I saw Iria jump back, afraid. I'm sorry, I moved towards her. I didn't know you were here. Sorry I saw you crying. Iria moved to sit next to me. Look, our hands now match. I wiped my tears and smiled when I saw Iria smile. I sat there in silence for a while. I wanted to bring up an idea I had for a while, but was scared to say it out loud. But my idea of Iria coming to live inside the house wasn't going to work. What if they hurt her too? Iria, let's run away, I said seriously, and when I saw her freeze up, I kept going. It's okay, I can take care of you. I can steal some food. If we get to my grandma, I'm sure I can't leave the shed, Iria interrupted me. I can come during the day and open the door. I stopped as she shook her head. I can't leave. I have tried. Iria started to cry. I've tried many times. I just can't. Sorry if you want to go. No, I could never leave you. I hugged her. I will stay with you. Iria spoke, but I didn't understand a word she said. The world swirled around me. I felt lightheaded as everything started to become dark, and once more everything was all right. I didn't want to worry Iria, so I didn't ask what she had said, and just nodded. Besides, you don't have to worry about Estrella for much longer. Iria sat back down and started to draw on the floor with her finger. What do you mean I don't have to worry about Aunt Estrella? I asked. She is going to die soon, she said as she continued to draw on the floor. How do you know? I asked as I started to draw on the floor too. The darkness in which I had first seen Iria emerge seemed to be creeping closer to us. I tried to back away, but Iria was unbothered as it made contact with her finger. I don't know, Iria answered. I just know. I didn't ask anything else. Instead, I joined her once more to draw on the floor and smiled when I saw she had drawn us together. The rest of the night, we created a world of magic and happiness with our drawings. Having Iria in my life did make things better. No matter what happened, what kind of abuse I took, or how much hunger I faced, I knew I would see her too. From time to time, I managed to sneak in the chalk colors my cousin left outside. We would draw inside the shed and erase everything before morning. A week later, we got the news that Aunt Estrella had died from a heart attack. She had been out eating burgers with Regina when she suddenly hit the floor and never got back up. Regina went to live with her father, and I never had to see her again. Grandma locked herself in her room, only coming out to eat whatever was not rotten in the fridge. As long as I avoided her during her outings, I didn't have much to worry about. Aunt Manuela came from time to check on her and yelled at me to clean the house. Since I had no supervision, I would go to the shed at night and sneak in sandwiches for both of us. I enjoyed my time with Iria and started to intentionally make Grandma angry so she would send me to the shed. I didn't care if she would abuse me or yell at me anymore because it meant I could spend time with Iria. One night, after Grandma shut the door to the house, I turned to show Iria the bracelets I had made us from the stolen beads and thread when I saw her rocking herself in the corner, crying. I approached her, but this time she flinched away from me. I wanted to get closer, but the darkness scared me. It embraced Iria. I'm unsure if protecting her or trying to keep her as its own, but as Iria sobbed once more, it made my trembling legs move towards her. After all, I was the big sister and I had to take care of her. As I hugged her, the usual dizziness took over, but this time it took a much stronger hold of my heart. I felt the air leave my lungs and the darkness became heavy. Iria screamed no, and finally I was able to breathe. The air in my lungs had never felt so good. I hadn't noticed that I had peed myself and I felt embarrassed. I sat up, covering myself as best as possible and hoping Iria couldn't smell my soiled clothes. I'm sorry, I managed to cough out. I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for, but it felt like I had to. I don't want you to die, she cried. The world became silent for a second. I couldn't hear Iria's cries, nor my own, as I processed what she had just said. I was going to die. I was going to die just like my mom and dad had. I wasn't ready to die. Iria, I won't die, I said as I wiped the tears off my eyes. I have to take care of you. I had dropped the bracelets in my trance and picked them up and handed one to Iria. I made sure to put the one heart-shaped bead on her bracelet. She took it carefully, making sure not to touch me, and put it on. I don't want to lose you, she cried. I was alone for so long, and finally I have you. I have a sister to talk with and have fun. I don't want that to ever end. Don't worry, as long as we're both wearing these bracelets, we will always be together. I tried to smile. That night, we didn't do much. We took turns crying, but as much as I tried to approach her, she never let me get close. I never knew when I fell asleep, but this time when I woke up, I felt a pang of sadness at not seeing Iria. While I knew better than to be crying when Grandma or Aunt Manuela opened the shed, I couldn't help myself but sob. Grandma looked at me in disgust as she dragged me back inside the house, but right before making it in, she stopped as she felt something that shouldn't have been on my wrist. I felt my feet lift from the ground as she lifted my arm to look at it. The bracelet with stolen beads. You thief, how dare you take things from others? With all the things I give you and have sacrificed for you, you still dare to steal. She yelled at me as she threw me inside the house. I tried to respond, but I couldn't get a word out. New tears ran down my face, but I ignored them as I tried to get away from her. It's your fault my only son is gone, and you can't even be a good daughter to honor him. I gave you a home when no one wanted you, and this is how you pay. By being a thief, she screamed as she went after me. I wasn't sure where to go, but I knew I had to get away from her. As she continued to yell at me, I ran. I could hear the clap of her sandals on the floor, a noise that to this day still haunts me as I tried to get away from her. As I saw her grab the mallet, I managed to free myself from her. Maybe it was out of instinct, but I ran towards the shed. I didn't want to die, and I didn't know what to do. As I opened the door of the shed, Grandma pulled my hair, but instantly froze when she looked inside. Iria, help me, I begged. Grandma let go of my hair and I dropped to the floor, her face contorted in terror. I didn't know what was going on, but Iria looked at Grandma with so much fury. This can't be, Grandma's voice trembled. For the first time, Iria walked out of the shed, followed by the darkness that always embraced her. She walked directly to my grandma, looked her in the eyes. She then grabbed the mallet and dropped it to the floor. It's time, Iria said calmly as she took hold of Grandma's hand. I could see her shudder the way I did whenever I touched Iria, but unlike me, she tried to let go. But no matter how much she tried, Iria wouldn't let her go. Instead, she was dragging her inside the shed and into the darkness. Grandma screamed to be let go. Aunt Manuela came running out from the house and froze at the sight of Iria and Grandma. Iria took one look at her, went back to her task. Iria, what's going on? I asked, somehow feeling this would be the last time I saw her. Iria looked at me and smiled as she raised her hand with the bracelet. I think I was supposed to be the big sister after all. I will always be with you, Iria said as she closed the door of the shed behind her. Aunt Manuela and I heard screams of Grandma's inside, but neither of us moved until everything was silent. But when Aunt Manuela opened the shed, there was no one. The darkness that always filled the shed was gone, alongside Iria and Grandma. There was no way to explain what happened, so when Aunt Manuela was asked about Grandma, she just said that one day she was gone. When she was offered custody, she refused, saying she never wanted to see me again. I went to live with my maternal grandma after the incident, and I could finally live life. I could be a child once more and enjoy being loved. Years later, I learned that Iria's real name had been Dolores, and she was my father's oldest sister. Grandma had hated her, and one day she went missing. Everyone assumed she was a rebellious child, but now I think I figured out what had happened.
Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Sometimes I like to just play around in makeup, and so that's what we're doing today. So get ready with me, but also trying some new stuff out. There was a woman standing outside my bedroom in the middle of the night. Already off to a really strong start. When I was younger, my family lived in a very small house right next to the one I live in now. It resembled more like a small cottage. You could see almost every room from the hallway. It had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and I remember always thinking, how could something meant to feel homey, warm, and inviting feel wrong? I didn't have a reason for thinking that. Nothing dramatic had ever happened there before, but at nighttime, the small home felt different, like someone else was there with us. And I remember thinking how crazy that thought was, because realistically, if someone was there with us, there would be nowhere for them to hide. You know, logically, no one can be in the house, right? It's a small house. You can basically see from one end to the other. And so you know really that no one's there, but you can feel someone there. Because the house was so small, I slept in my parents' bedroom most nights. My bed was positioned right off of this huge dark window to my right that was covered in thin curtains. And to my left was the bedroom door. If the door stayed open at night, I could see straight into the living room. Oh no. Past the living room, I could see the bathroom at the very end of the house. I don't know why, but I hated when the door would stay open. I hated that view. Something about staring into the dark hallway at night made my stomach twist and my palms sweaty. So every night before bed, I would tell my dad the same thing. Please close the door when you come to bed. He usually stayed up later than everyone else watching TV in the living room. I would make him promise to remember. One night when I was around 8 years old, I woke up sometime around 2 or 3 in the morning, and immediately I realized that the bedroom door was open. I laid there staring into the darkness of the living room. The house looked different at night, but this night in particular was the worst. The shadows in the house felt deeper somehow, and I was actually making note of that detail when I saw her. Why does the thought of like a woman ghost or a girl ghost seem so much worse than a man ghost? I feel like it should be the opposite, okay? A woman standing near the bathroom doorway. At first, my brain, still clearly waking up from sleep, tried to convince me that maybe it was my mom. The figure looked like she had just stepped out of the bathroom.
but it was just standing there, unmoving. Oh, hell no. It was at that moment that I realized that something about her looked wrong. She was tall, entirely too tall to be my mother, who stood at 5 feet flat on a good day. I feel like I want more bronzer around the forehead. You want to be warm. It's almost summer. But this woman seemed towering, thin and long, her shape stretched unnaturally in the hallway shadows. And I was scared, but I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. So I told myself that it was my mom. It had to be, because the alternative would be too terrifying. I think the next time I need a different method to put the powder on. I don't think the beauty blender is the best here. So I whispered to her, why would you do that? Genuinely, why would you do that? Mom? No response. I tried again. Mom? And still nothing. The figure didn't move. It didn't speak. It didn't acknowledge me in any way. It just stood there staring at me from the bathroom. Oh my God. Imagine calling out to what you hope to be is your mother, and nothing's responding. That thing is just standing there, staring at you. Then I made the mistake that changed everything. Oh God. I turned my head and looked beside me at my parents' bed. And there they were, both of them, sound asleep. My dad was snoring, and there was my mother's form under the blankets, right next to him. I'm really liking like a really dark brow right now, especially because I went a little bit thinner. I don't know. I felt myself go completely cold because I realized that the illusion I had been trying to sell myself had just been shattered. If my parents were calmly sleeping in their bed, then who was standing in the hallway? Who's standing in the hallway? Who's standing in the hallway, sister? I slowly looked back towards the bathroom and found that the woman had moved. Now she was standing in the living room, closer. I hadn't detected any movement. No creak of the floorboards, no swaying in my peripheral vision, no padding of feet, nothing. 1 second she was near the bathroom, and the next she wasn't. This is genuinely absolutely terrible. This is absolutely terrible. She was simply just nearer than before. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself and stared at her with wide eyes, completely frozen. I just wanted to wake my parents up so badly, but I couldn't move. The woman just stood there in the darkness of the living room, tall and still and watching. I blinked and then realized she was now standing directly in front of the bedroom door. Why is she waiting for you to not be paying attention? Why does she wait for the split second that you're not watching? Right outside the room. She hadn't made a single sound, and she was now close enough that I could clearly see her shape in the darkness. I don't know how long I stared at her. The seconds felt like hours, and I kept waiting for her to move closer, to step into the room, but she never did. She just stood there watching, which in my opinion is so much worse, because you're just waiting for it. You're waiting for the second that she's going to pounce. She's not pouncing. Eventually, my exhaustion led to me closing my eyes and falling asleep. I told my parents everything the next morning, but they didn't believe me. They went on and on about how it was just a nightmare and not to worry about it, and eventually I was able to convince myself that what they were saying was true. Until years later, of course. A few weeks ago, my family was sitting around talking about that old house, sharing random memories, and somehow the conversation shifted towards strange experiences there. That's when my brother suddenly said something that made me remember. He said that when he used to stay home alone in that house, he constantly heard things moving by themselves. Footsteps, objects shifting, sounds coming from empty rooms. And then my mom went quiet. Girl! After a moment, she admitted something. My aunt lives in that old house now, and apparently she told my mom that she constantly feels a presence near the basement, like someone is standing there watching her.
Hello, Daisy. I love listening to scary Mexican stories, so I decided to share mine. I go by Angela, and my family is from Zacatecas. Growing up, both of my parents would tell my siblings and me stories about how their house was haunted. My dad lived alone in that house for some time, and he admits he drank a lot back then. Still, he insists that one night, while he was in the cochera, the garage, drinking with his friends, he saw a shadow and heard a little girl crying. It wasn't just him who heard it, others did too. That same night, when he went to bed, he felt two hands grab his ankles and drag his legs out of bed. He yelled at whatever it was to stop, and it did. The next morning, he woke up kneeling on the ground, with his upper body still resting on the bed. At first, he thought it might have been a prank by his friends or brothers, but when he went to check, he realized the door was locked. No one could have gotten inside. After my parents got married, they had a priest come to bendecir, to bless the house. Even after that, they would still hear random sounds, like dishes falling and breaking. But when they checked, nothing was there. Later, my parents moved to the US, where my older brother and I were born. When I was around 2, we moved back to Mexico, so I don't remember any of this myself. During that time, my parents were living in that same house. My brother and I were very rowdy as kids, and our favorite thing to do was hit random objects with a branch. One night, my parents were in bed when they felt something hitting the mattress from underneath. They thought it was my brother or me and yelled at us to stop, but the hitting continued. When they turned to check, they saw both of us asleep right next to them. Still, they felt scratching from underneath them. Slow at first, then more noticeable, like something was moving directly beneath the bed. My dad was about to get up and check, but my mom stopped him. She was terrified. For context, my parents have never owned any pets, and there aren't any animals in El Rancho except for cows and horses. They said the tapping and scratching didn't stop the entire night. When we moved back to the US, they had another priest bless the house, but nothing changed. My uncle has remodeled the house twice, and every time he works there, he says he feels a cold presence. He even ran out once after feeling someone touched his shoulder, despite no one being there. No one lived in the house for over 15 years, until last year. My brother went to Mexico for a month and stayed there with some friends. One night, they were all sleeping in the same room, in different beds, when a strong gust of wind suddenly woke them up. It sounded like the door had been pushed open, even though all the doors and windows were closed. They ignored it and went back to sleep. But the next day, one of his friends said he saw his cobija, his blanket, floating in the air. He said he wanted to get up and check on my brother, but was too scared. That same day was La Fiesta Patronal del Rancho, so there was a priest nearby. My brother asked him to bless the house, and thankfully he did. After my brother left in September, I went to Mexico in December. The house had recently been blessed again. I wasn't planning on staying there, but my dad asked me to inspect it to make sure everything was in good condition. I took pictures and recorded a 30-minute video of the entire house. I was there alone for over an hour, trying not to think about all the stories I had heard. While I was in the backyard, pulling some weeds from the concrete, I noticed a small handprint on the outside of the back door. I took a picture, but didn't think much of it at first, since my uncle and his child had given me a ride. But then I realized the child had never gone inside the house. And one of the creepiest stories my dad ever told me happened to my great-grandfather in the 1920s in a small town called La Noria, Hidalgo, Mexico. One afternoon, his wife asked him to ride to a nearby town to pick up a few things they needed for the house. As he made his way there on horseback, he passed by a barranca, where several women were washing clothes near the water. Everything looked normal, but on his way home later that night, something felt different. The road seemed darker than usual, almost unnaturally quiet. As he approached the barranca again, his horse suddenly became uneasy, snorting and resisting as if it sensed something nearby. Cálmate, caballo, no hay nada. Calm down, horse, there's nothing there, he told it, trying to calm it down. Then out of nowhere, he heard what sounded like a baby crying somewhere nearby. He got off his horse and followed the sound. To his surprise, he found a baby. At first, he thought one of the women washing clothes earlier must have accidentally left their child behind. Ay no, ¿quién se olvidó de su hijo? Oh no, who forgot their child? He thought to himself as he picked the baby up. Feeling bad for the child, he tried getting back onto his horse so he could search for the mother. But the horse became even more agitated. It fought against him, refusing to let him mount. After struggling for several moments, he finally managed to calm the animal enough to continue riding home. As he rode through the darkness, he looked down at the baby, trying to comfort it. Ya verás, cuando encuentre a tu mamá, le voy a decir de todo. Nunca más volverá a olvidarse de ti. You'll see, when I find your mother, I'm going to give her a piece of my mind. She'll never forget you again. A moment later, he heard what sounded like a low growl. His horse immediately became agitated again. The entire road around him was silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then he suddenly felt the baby tug against him. When he looked down, his blood ran cold. The baby no longer looked normal. Its eyes had turned completely dark, and then it began to laugh. A deep, unnatural laugh that didn't sound human at all. The creature slowly looked up at him. ¿No te gustaría ver mis dientes? Then it opened its mouth wide. Inside were a row of sharp fangs. Terrified, my great-grandfather threw the baby to the ground. The moment it hit the dirt, it disappeared. He immediately took off on his horse and didn't stop riding until he reached home. When he burst through the doors, he was pale and trembling. His wife kept asking him what had happened, but he couldn't even speak. According to my dad, it wasn't until the next day, after his wife and sister-in-law made him a remedy with peppers, that he finally calmed down enough to explain what he had seen that night near the barranca. To this day, my family still doesn't know what he encountered out there in the darkness.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
My name is Dulce, and this happened to me in Michoacán, Mexico. It was my first time visiting my mom's ranch in Mexico, and I was staying alone in one of her houses. When you walk through the gate of the property, my mom's house is on one side, and my uncle's house is nearby. My mom's house is usually empty because she can't visit often. Most of the time, it just sits there vacant. I remember the first day I landed. That night, there was fiestas happening in my rancho. Every year in December, the town throws small parties with music, food, and people everywhere. My cousins were busy working at their taqueria, selling tacos during the fiesta, and most of the family had either gone to work or were out enjoying the celebration. At one point during the night, I realized I had forgotten my sweater at my mom's house. The house was close by, and I didn't want to bother my cousin, who was still working, so I decided to walk back by myself to grab it. But as I started walking toward the house, I noticed something that made everything feel even creepier. Both my mom's house and my uncle's house were completely empty. Everyone had gone to the fiesta. The lights were off and the area was dark and quiet. The music from the fiesta could barely be heard in the distance, and I was walking there completely alone. As I got closer to my mom's house, I started feeling uneasy, like something wasn't right. Then I stepped inside. The moment I walked in, the uneasy feeling got even heavier. The house felt strangely quiet, like the air itself was thick. I started looking around for my sweater, trying to ignore the feeling. That's when I suddenly heard a knocking noise coming from somewhere in the house. I froze for a moment, listening, but I tried to ignore it and kept looking for my sweater, telling myself it was probably nothing. Even though I acted like it didn't bother me, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was there. About 5 minutes later, my cousins suddenly came running to the house, looking nervous. They asked me, "Why did you leave by yourself? Why did you come here alone?" I told them I had just come to grab my sweater. They looked at each other and said, "Why didn't you tell us? One of us could have walked with you." Then I asked them something that made the moment even stranger. "Were you guys knocking right now?" They both looked confused and said no. They had just left the taqueria and came straight over to check on me. That's when the uneasy feeling in my chest got even stronger. From the very first day I stepped inside that house, something about it always felt wrong. The air felt heavy, like the house was holding onto something. A few days later, even stranger things started happening. At night, when everything was silent, I would hear footsteps coming from upstairs. It sounded like someone slowly walking across the floor. The problem was, no one lived upstairs. The house wasn't even furnished. It was completely empty. Every time I heard the footsteps, my heart would start racing. I would stay completely still in bed, just listening. Because of this, every night before going to sleep, I started praying. I would pray for protection before laying down. Almost every night, I would wake up suddenly around 3 or 4 a.m., what most people call the devil's hour. Then on the 4th night, I woke up around 3 a.m. because I needed to use the restroom. Half asleep, I walked to the bathroom. While I was inside, I suddenly heard knocking coming from the metal door of the house. It's a heavy metal door, the kind that makes a loud creaking sound when it moves, so when someone knocks on it, you can hear it clearly. At first, I thought it was my cousins. One of them was sleeping in the same room as me, and another was in the next room. But when I stepped out and looked, both of them were completely asleep. No one had gotten up. No one had touched the door. The next day, I told my aunt about the footsteps and the knocking. She calmly told me something that sent chills through my entire body. For years, whenever someone in our family passed away, they would bring the body to my mom's house and keep it there for the velorio, the wake. The body would stay there for a few days while everyone came to pray and say goodbye. And the room where they kept the bodies was the same room I had been sleeping in. Even though they were my own family members, the thought of that terrified me. I couldn't stop thinking about the footsteps, the knocking, and the heavy feeling in that house. After that, I couldn't sleep peacefully there anymore. Eventually, I asked a padre to come bless the house. After he blessed it, everything went quiet. Since that day, I've never heard the footsteps or the knocking again.
Today's house has one of the most cursed rooms I have ever featured. It's in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and just in general, the Southern Gothic vibes here are off the charts. We start off in this gorgeous curved front porch with wrought iron railings, twisty stucco columns, and 2 chairs ideal for aging Southern matriarchs, and enter the home into this foyer with its bowed windows and grand sweeping staircase. By far the most normal space in the home, but don't be fooled. Off the foyer is the living room with this massive arched fireplace fireplace surrounded by built-ins, and a bathroom. I am so genuinely fascinated by this whole desk/armchair situation here. Ditto the heavy-duty prayer candle position conveniently next to the toilet really paints a picture of what? I don't know, but a picture. I think this might be a southern thing, but the kitchen is actually in this outbuilding, and it is hands down my favorite room in the entire home. This wall of cast iron pans is so unbelievably cool, like I want to copy that in my own home. I love the blue and green glass in the windows. Really, this is one new countertop and a good scrubbing away from being chic. The rest of the outbuilding, including these 2 bedrooms and especially this bathroom, are inexplicably decorated with a safari theme, and around the corner, we have the aforementioned cursed room. I don't really know what I can say about it, so let's move on to the oddly narrow second floor landing of the main house, which has a gorgeous original railing, where you'll find the house's remaining bedrooms. This level threw me for a loop. We go from these Grey Gardensy, Tennessee Williams adjacent rooms off the main corridor, more on this profoundly haunted children's room later, to another inexplicably safari/tiki themed room, this one with access to a rooftop deck and its own ensuite, complete with the shower I'll generously describe as rustic, to Mother's room from Psycho, to this one with powerful worst room at the Motel 6 energy. There's also an expansive back/side yard complete with access to a riverboat whose vibe definitely matches the main house. And there is just something I find so genuinely charming about how ramshackle this place is. It's all very Alabama Chainsaw Massacre, which sounds shady, but I mean it in the nicest way possible. Like, this is outsider art. Which wraps up my tour. If you made it to the end, be sure to comment which of these slightly distressed children's toys you most identify with today. Check out the listing at the link in my bio.
Okay, so this is a female. She's about in her 30s or 40s. She's screaming and yelling, holding a pan. She would hit people with this pan. 2 kids, boy and a girl. The little girl we're going to have to move over. I'll do that later in the video. The elderly woman was her husband's mother. She was sort of married or with someone. Like, there was no love there. There was no love in this woman's life, and she wasn't capable of it. There was something seriously wrong with her. And they, at this time, whatever time this was, they didn't have it feels like they didn't have medication, so she couldn't have been helped. But anyway, she would take her mother-in-law and just point her at the wall in the wheelchair and leave her, and was clearly abusive to the children to such a degree that it's painful to look at. And she died around 35. It feels like she took her own life. Let's definitely pass this little girl over. And she's curled up in a ball because she was really sick. She died from a virus. But there was so much abuse that it was just like, I feel like she's between the ages of 5 and 7. So I'm just going to sit with her for a minute. So for anyone who wants to help and who's watching, so feel as if you're just wrapping your energy around her and helping her to open up, look up, move her shoulders back. Her guides are always there. And we're just showing her a different way, a different option than fear. And allow her to look up, and let's see, she's getting ready. And we can lift her up. Moving someone over is up to them, right? Just like for us in body, it's our choice when we're ready to change, leave a relationship, leave a job, right? So I'm not coming in and doing anything. This little girl was ready, and timing aligns because that's how the universe works, right? So if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. It could be you, you know? Anyway, so there may be a little boy there. Hold on, let's go back. Little boy's playing. He's like has this like a sword, and he's playing. It's not It's not a spirit. I'm just seeing another little boy that lived there. His energy, but that's not his spirit, so he's not there.
The woman behind me is Betty Broderick, and she's probably one of the most misunderstood killers in American history. Betty died last week in a prison hospital after serving 37 years in prison because she killed her ex-husband and his new, much younger wife. This case is infamous because it's framed as the ultimate woman scorned, but there is much more to this story, and a lot of people don't know the full truth. So let's talk about the story of Betty Broderick. Reminder, I cover a lot of dark true crime stories on this channel, so viewer discretion is advised, but follow along if you'd like to hear more. So this is Betty. She is one of 6 kids in a big Catholic family. She went to college and got her degree in early childhood education. In 1965, she met Dan Broderick. She was 17 and he was 21, and he was just about to start medical school at Cornell. They got married 4 years later in 1969. Now, here's what I need you to understand about the next 16 years of their lives together. Dan Broderick was incredibly successful, and Betty Broderick is a big part of the reason for that. Because during the early part of their marriage, Betty was working as a teacher and supporting both of them. They were both living off of her single income, and she worked while he went to law school, while he went to medical school, and she was doing this while also raising 4 children, keeping the house clean, managing the social calendar, and to keep the financial pressure off of him while he was studying to become a doctor and a lawyer. But it was also worth it to Betty because it'll be a more bountiful harvest when it actually pays off, right? So now the year is 1983, and Dan Broderick is one of the most successful medical malpractice attorneys in San Diego. And they upgraded. They had a mansion, they had their 4 beautiful children, Betty didn't have to work anymore, and in Betty's mind, she is living her dream life. This is everything she's ever wanted. These are the well-earned fruits of her labor. Life was perfect. And then Dan Broderick hired a 21-year-old legal secretary named Linda Kolkina. Betty knew they were having an affair almost immediately. Her husband denied it for years, and when she pushed, he would gaslight her even more. And then he started planting the seeds that she was crazy. He'd do it to her face, he'd do it to his friends, he would do it to her friends. He knew exactly how he was going to spin the narrative, because he just spent thousands of dollars learning how to do it really well. So this is the part that most of the retellings of this story skip, because there is a name for what's happening to Betty right now. And it's something that many people have experienced but may not have the language for it, and that's called betrayal trauma. This isn't heartbreak. This is a profound psychological injury that happens when someone you deeply trust or depend on for emotional or physical survival violates your trust. It is deeply dysregulating and traumatizing because it really shatters your reality and it stops your ability to trust. Dan Broderick was the one who filed for divorce, and Betty was totally set up to fail. Not only was Dan Broderick the president of the Bar Association, he had spent years on this campaign that Betty was crazy. She couldn't find attorneys that were willing to take her case to go against him. She lost custody of all 4 of her children. Her house was sold without her permission. And all of those years of her supporting her husband weren't acknowledged because it was a no-fault divorce era. Proceedings dragged on for years, and during every one of them, Dan made sure to document her increasingly erratic behavior. But the truth is that Betty was unstable. She had lost everything. And not only that, she was in a tremendous amount of emotional pain, and nobody was validating it. So, in an effort to be witnessed, Betty started making some really bad decisions. I mean, think about why the war boys in Mad Max yell, "Witness me." There is some method to that madness. Betty started leaving hundreds of profane messages on an answering machine. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's what voicemail was back in the day. She would ignore restraining orders and just show up places that she wasn't supposed to be. She drove her car to like the front door while the children were inside, and they had a whole narrative because they heard their mom screaming on a voicemail thinking that she's nuts. So she's just playing right into his hands. But I think we can all agree that this is not the behavior of someone who's okay. This is someone who needs real help. And no one was giving her a break. Like, the court totally gypped her on, like, alimony and a divorce settlement, and her ex-husband Dan even held, like, her alimony payments hostage, depending on how well she behaved. I'm not joking. She once told a therapist, "You make me not want to be angry, but if I'm not angry, I'm not gonna make it." To me, I don't think that that's the sentence of a woman planning a murder. I honestly think that's a woman whose rage was kind of just a load-bearing wall at that point, and it just got the best of her. Because in November of 1989, Betty took her daughter's key and went over to her ex-husband's house in the middle of the night. She walked into Linda and Dan's bedroom and fired a 5-shot revolver into the bed where they were sleeping. The shots were fatal. Dan Broderick was 44 and Linda Colkina Broderick was 28. Because Dan and Linda got married, by the way. So Betty Broderick does have a fan club online, but I don't think I'm gonna join it. Here's the thing, Betty Broderick got completely screwed over, but their 4 children lost both of their parents that day. Linda Colkina was only 28 years old, and I believe that our autonomy ends where someone else's begins. So I wouldn't say that Betty Broderick is a hero. However, I don't think that there is a version here where she's the only villain. Betty Broderick was on Oprah, and Oprah said that she believed that Betty was a woman who gave herself away. But I disagree with that assessment, because not only does it put the burden on Betty for not doing a better job of protecting herself from her husband, but it's just more nuanced than that. This is what can happen if you discover that the institutions and people you thought you can trust, you can't. And what the untreated psychological torment and betrayal trauma can do to somebody if their pain isn't witnessed. Because if the pain doesn't have anywhere to go, it goes inward, and it starts to metastasize and eats away at everything good in you.